Just after sunrise, Fatima Yadrago made her way carefully to the bus station in Ouagadougou. Her weathered hands gripped her walking stick with practiced confidence, counting her steps as she had done countless times before. At 63, she had lived nearly 20 years in darkness. But her other senses had sharpened to navigate the world her eyes no longer could. The morning air told her everything: the dry, earthy scent of Burkina Faso's dust carried on the Harmattan wind, the warm aroma of fresh bread from street vendors, and the sharp bite of diesel from aging buses lined up for the day's journeys. She was headed to visit her daughter in a neighboring village, a trip she made every month, undeterred by the challenges of blindness. "Madame Fatima," came the familiar voice of Musa, the bus conductor she'd come to know well. His tone was always kind, always respectful. "Your usual seat is ready, third row, right side by the window." She smiled, her face glowing with quiet gratitude. "Thank you, my son. You always look after me." As she settled into her seat, the comforting sounds of departure surrounded her. Passengers boarding, casual chatter filling the air, children giggling against smudged windows, women adjusting their bright head wraps, men talking about the work ahead. The old bus, its blue and yellow paint faded by years under the harsh African sun, groaned gently as it prepared to depart. Like many public buses in Burkina Faso, it had seen better days, but it remained a vital link between scattered communities. Near the back, a man named Ibrahim Traoré took a quiet seat. At 34, he was a military officer traveling incognito, dressed in civilian clothes. His posture was calm, his eyes alert. Official business had brought him here, but for now, he preferred to remain unnoticed. As the bus pulled out of the station, Fatima leaned into the familiar rhythm of travel. The steady thrum of the engine, the soft sway of the vehicle, the world around her unfolding not in images, but in sound, scent, and instinct. The route passed the outskirts of Ouagadougou, buzzing markets, fields where barefoot children kicked soccer balls, and women balanced towering bundles on their heads with practiced grace. Though she couldn't see these scenes, Fatima felt them. The laughter of children, bleating goats, the distant pulse of drums from a village celebration. An hour into the journey, she sensed something change. The engine's rhythm faltered, and a new vibration trembled through the floor beneath her feet. Subtle, but noticeable. "Is everything all right?" she asked the young woman sitting beside her, who cradled an infant in her lap. "I think so, grandmother," the woman replied respectfully. "The driver seems fine." But further back, Ibrahim had noticed it too. Years of military training had tuned his instincts to subtle shifts. The engine's hum was wrong. Worse, there was a faint odor, something acrid and out of place. He sat up straighter, alert. The countryside rolled by, villages with mud brick homes and towering baobab trees, a landscape shaped by centuries of resilience against the Sahel's relentless climate. For Fatima, it was home. Even without sight, she felt deeply connected to every mile. As the bus approached a small trading post for its routine stop, the driver began to slow. Passengers stirred, ready to stretch their legs, buy snacks, or use the facilities. The stop was routine, but the signs Fatima and Ibrahim had picked up on hinted at anything but. The bus came to a halt on the dusty lot beside the market. Passengers disembarked, their voices growing faint as they wandered off. Fatima remained in her seat, preferring not to risk navigating the unfamiliar area. Ibrahim stayed aboard as well, quietly reviewing documents in his briefcase. From the corner of his eye, he watched the driver circle the bus, inspecting it. Nothing out of the ordinary, yet the unease lingered. Then came the first real warning, a faint curl of smoke rising from beneath the bus. Both Ibrahim and the driver spotted it at once. "Driver!" Ibrahim called out sharply, his voice firm with authority. Smoke rose from underneath the bus. The driver's face shifted instantly, from casual concern to alarm. He moved quickly to investigate, but within seconds, everything changed. What began as a faint wisp of smoke suddenly thickened, turning darker and more menacing. Inside, Fatima sensed it before she smelled it. The air had changed, warmer, heavier, unnatural. Her finely tuned senses, sharpened by a lifetime without sight, recognized the danger before anyone else. "Something's wrong," she said aloud, her voice calm but clear. A young mother across the aisle looked up, cradling her sleeping baby. "What do you mean, grandmother?" she asked nervously. Before Fatima could answer, the smell hit. Acrid, chemical, unmistakable. burning fuel and melting plastic. The fire was spreading. Outside, the driver shouted for help, his voice rising in panic.
Fire!
Everyone off the bus,
Now!
Ibrahim was already moving. His military training took over as he scanned the scene with calm efficiency. The fire seemed to have started in the engine, but smoke was already seeping through the vents. "We need to evacuate immediately," he told the passengers. "Move to the exits in an orderly fashion." The young mother rushed toward the front with her now crying infant. Two elderly men, roused from sleep, struggled to understand what was happening. But Fatima faced the biggest challenge. She stood, cane in hand, but the chaos left her disoriented. The smoke thickened. Heat pulsed through the space. She heard shouting, confusion, but she couldn't locate the exits. "Help me," she called steadily. "I can't see where to go." Ibrahim heard her and understood immediately. While others could find their way out, Fatima was trapped. The smoke grew heavier. Time was running out. He pushed toward her. "I'm here to help you," he said. "Take my arm, I'll guide you." Together, they started moving, but things worsened. The fire had reached the fuel lines. Smoke blinded even Ibrahim now. The heat was unbearable. The door. Fatima gasped. "I can't breathe." Ibrahim's pulse quickened. He was losing his sense of direction. The bus had become a furnace. Outside, the driver and passengers realized not everyone had made it out. The young mother clutched her child and screamed. "She's still in there."
The blind woman?
The bus was engulfed. Metal hissed and groaned. Smoke filled every space. Ibrahim's eyes burned. His lungs screamed for air. Beside him, Fatima clung to his arm, trembling. "Stay with me, madam," he said through the smoke. "We're going to make it." But even he knew they were running out of time. Flames licked the seats behind them. The exits were hidden behind walls of smoke. He moved forward blindly, each step a gamble. I can't breathe," Fatima gasped. "Yes, you can," he replied, voice strained. "Just a few more steps." Outside, passengers watched in horror. The driver radioed frantically for help. But everyone knew it might already be too late. Realizing he couldn't find the exits through the thick smoke, Ibrahim made a snap decision. He would try breaking a window. Guiding Fatima toward what he hoped was a side window, he turned and slammed his elbow into the glass. The first blow barely cracked it. The second, driven by pure desperation, shattered it completely. Cool air rushed in, sharp and clean. For a moment they could breathe, but the window was high, narrow, and completely unsuited for getting an elderly, blind woman through, especially with fire now raging closer. "There's a window," Ibrahim said quickly, turning to Fatima. "I'm going to lift you up and help you through. The people outside will catch you." "What about you?" Fatima asked, her voice faint, barely audible over the roar of the flames. "I'll be right behind you," Ibrahim replied, though he didn't know if that was true. Helping her might be the last thing he'd ever do. Outside, a small crowd had gathered. They saw the window break and understood what was happening. "Someone's coming through!" One of the trading post workers shouted, jet ready to help. Several men rushed forward, shielding their faces from the heat. They positioned themselves below the window, arms outstretched. Inside, Ibrahim wrapped his arms around Fatima. She was light, but the smoke, the flames, the chaos, everything made it harder. Visibility was nearly gone. "I'm going to push you through," he told her, coughing. "They'll catch you." She hesitated, then asked suddenly, "My son, what is your name?" "Ibrahim," he said, muscles straining. "Ibrahim Traoré." As he lifted and pushed, Fatima's feet disappeared through the broken window. Outside, hands caught her and pulled her to safety. Relief surged through Ibrahim, but it vanished just as fast. The fire had reached their section of the bus. Flames licked the floor. The space where he'd just stood was now burning. He turned, tried to climb out himself, but his body betrayed him. The heat had weakened him more than he'd realized. His vision swam, his arms trembled. The opening above him, once manageable, now seemed impossibly far. Outside, the men gently moved Fatima away from the bus, but she stopped suddenly, her hand shooting out. "Wait," she said, alarm in her voice. "Where is Ibrahim? Where is the man who saved me?" They turned back toward the bus. Flames poured from the shattered window. No one else followed. "He's not coming," one man said grimly. "It's too late." The fire. But Fatima wouldn't accept that. She took a step toward the burning bus, blind but determined. "He saved me," she cried, voice rising above the roar. "He gave his life for mine, Ibrahim! Ibrahim!" Then, from the front of the bus, movement. A figure staggered from the smoke, collapsing just outside the main door. It was Ibrahim. His clothes were scorched, his face blackened with soot. But he was alive. The crowd rushed toward him, but Fatima was already moving, guided by the sound of his coughing. She knelt beside him, hands gently finding his face, her way of seeing. "You came back," she whispered, tears cutting lines down her soot-covered cheeks. "You came back?" Fatima whispered, her voice trembling with relief and wonder. The immediate danger had passed, but a heavy, breathless silence fell over the scene. The bus behind them was now a furnace, consumed entirely by fire. It crackled violently, a monstrous reminder of how close they had all come to death. Ibrahim sat on the scorched earth, just beyond the reach of the flames, his chest heaving as he fought to catch his breath. His face was blackened with soot, his clothes singed and clinging to him with sweat. Yet he was alive. Beside him, Fatima knelt, her hands resting gently on his shoulders, fingers trembling slightly. The way she held him was neither possessive nor hesitant. It was reverent, as if she were trying to confirm that he was real. Around them, the other passengers formed a loose circle. Some were still coughing, others wiping smoke from their eyes, but all were quiet now. Their expressions, worn, stunned, and wide-eyed, reflected the same awe, relief, respect, even love. They had witnessed something they would never forget, an act of courage not loud or showy, but deeply human. Ibrahim, still catching his breath, didn't seem aware of the eyes on him. He was still inside the moment, still in the bus, still pushing Fatima through the window and praying she'd be caught. Fatima, though blind, seemed to see everything. Her hands gently moved from his shoulders to his face. She studied him with her fingers, his cheekbones, his brow, the line of his jaw, as if memorizing a sculpture. No one spoke. It was as if the world, for a few brief moments, had gone still out of respect. Then a young mother, holding an infant that now slept peacefully against her chest, stepped forward. She knelt beside Ibrahim and held out a bottle of water. Her eyes, red from the smoke, were gentle. "Are you hurt?" she asked quietly. Ibrahim shook his head slowly and reached for the water. "I'm fine," he rasped, voice raw from the smoke. He paused, took a drink, and added, "Just glad we all made it out." But Fatima had not moved. Her hand still cradled his face. There was something sacred in the moment. Something private but shared. "You don't know what you've done," she said, her voice low but clear. The softness of her tone only amplified its weight, and everyone instinctively leaned in to listen. "You don't know what this means." Ibrahim blinked, unsure what to say. "Madame, I did what anyone would do. I couldn't leave you in there." Fatima smiled then, truly smiled, and her face changed. The lines of age, the marks of years lived with hardship, all softened into something radiant. For a moment, she seemed younger, timeless. "No, my son," she said, her voice almost musical. "Not anyone would have done what you did. Most people, good people, would have saved themselves. You chose to carry me." Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. She dropped them from his face and let them fall into her lap. "I have to tell you something," she continued. "Something I haven't spoken of in a very long time." Ibrahim tilted his head, his breath slowing. "I lost my sight 20 years ago," she said. "In a fire, very much like this one." A quiet gasp rippled through the small crowd. Ibrahim felt a shiver run down his spine. "I was in my village, in our home. It was the middle of the night. I woke to the smell of smoke. I could barely see, barely move. My husband tried to save me. He ran into the flames. He got to me. He almost had me out, but..." Her voice faltered, just for a heartbeat. "He didn't make it. He died trying to save me. I survived, but the smoke took my sight. I've lived with that guilt for 20 years, that he gave his life for me and I never got to say goodbye. I never got to thank him." Ibrahim's heart clenched. The heat from the fire still scorched his skin, but it was nothing compared to the ache that swelled in his chest as Fatima spoke. "This bus," she said. "This fire, it wasn't just a moment of danger for me. It was a return to my greatest nightmare. I was back there again. I could feel it in my bones. The heat, the smoke, the helplessness." Tears slid down her cheeks, but her voice never cracked. "And then you came for me. You guided me. You carried me. You pushed me to safety and stayed behind." She placed her hand over his again. "In my darkest moment, Once again, someone chose to walk into the flames for me. But this time I got to say thank you. Silence. Thick and sacred. Ibrahim didn't know what to say. He didn't feel like a hero. He hadn't been brave. He just acted. There was no time for doubt when someone needed help. "I'm not your husband," he said softly. "I don't know why I was there. Maybe it was chance. Maybe—" "No," Fatima interrupted. "It was mercy. It was grace. My husband gave me the gift of life once. You gave it to me again." She leaned forward, resting her forehead gently against his. The suit smeared between them. No one spoke. Some wept. In the background, emergency sirens began to wail in the distance. But the sound felt far away, secondary to the gravity of the moment. The crowd began to move again, some helping with supplies, others offering comfort. The mother handed over a small blanket for Ibrahim to wrap himself in. One man helped lift him to his feet, supporting his weight as he stood, still shaky. Others surrounded Fatima, ready to guide her wherever she needed to go. But Ibrahim stayed close, and Fatima, even without her sight, knew he was there. "You came back," she repeated, more to herself now. "You came back." She reached out, and he took her hand. This time he didn't let go. The air was thick with smoke and ash, yet somehow quieter than it had any right to be. The chaos had subsided. The worst had passed. But the silence that lingered now wasn't peace. It was the heavy hush that falls over people after they've come face to face with death and survived. The bus that had once been their vessel of travel was now a smoldering ruin. Flames licked through its frame, devouring what little was left to burn, casting an eerie glow over the desert road. Pieces of metal creaked and groaned as they bent under the heat, falling to the ground in twisted heaps. Ibrahim sat in the dirt, coughing lightly, his lungs still raw from the smoke. His face was streaked with soot and sweat. His hands trembled. Though he tried to hide it, he was alive, miraculously, gratefully, exhaustedly. Beside him knelt Fatima, her eyes closed, tears cutting clean paths down her cheeks. Her hands rested on his shoulders, hands weathered by time, by fire, by blindness. She didn't speak for a long moment. She only breathed, her presence both fragile and powerful. Then, her voice broke the silence. "You came back." The words were a whisper at first, as if they weren't meant for anyone else to hear. Yet somehow, everyone did. The gathered passengers, some sitting, others standing, still more being tended by volunteers and first responders, grew silent again. Even the wailing of a distant siren seemed to dull, like the world itself was listening. Fatima's tears fell freely now, but her voice, as she continued, was strong, rich with wisdom, scarred with experience. "Today you showed me something I had forgotten," she said slowly. "You showed me that love, real love, isn't about dying for someone. It's about living for them. It's about making sure they survive, even when you're not sure that you will." Ibrahim blinked, stunned. His throat tightened. He hadn't expected praise. He hadn't expected attention. He had acted on instinct, fueled by nothing more than the simple truth that another human being needed help. He hadn't thought of consequences or heroism. And yet here she was, this woman who had seen nothing, literally, and somehow seen everything. His eyes welled with tears. He looked down at his hands, blackened with soot, still trembling slightly. He started, but no words came. He lowered his gaze again, and Fatima continued. "My husband loved me," she said, deeply. "He gave his life trying to save me from a fire 20 years ago. He rushed into our home, knowing it might kill him. And it did. But it saved me. That love, it haunted me. It humbled me. It carried me through blindness, through grief, through motherhood, through loneliness." She inhaled sharply, then let it out. "But today, Ibrahim, you loved me too." Her words struck like a bolt of lightning. Ibrahim's head shot up, eyes wide. But she smiled gently. "No, not as a husband loves a wife. That's not what I mean," she explained. "You loved me as one human being loves another. Purely, fearlessly, without reason, without condition. And the miracle is we both lived. We both lived." She leaned forward then, and with the tenderness of a mother blessing her child, she kissed his forehead. Her lips trembled, but her breath was steady. The gesture was small, but it cracked something open in him. He had not wept during the fire. He had not screamed when the heat blistered his arms as he lifted her. But now, tears rolled freely down his cheeks. "You gave me back something I thought I had lost forever," she said, her hands still resting on the side of his face. "Faith in humanity. The crowd around them, diverse, battered, wide-eyed, stood still, transfixed. Some were crying, some simply stared. In that single moment, the bus accident no longer defined the day. What had happened after, the connection, the sacrifice, the healing did. Ibrahim Traoré, she said, her voice suddenly formal, almost ceremonial. You gave me back my belief that good people still exist in this world. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know if there was anything to say. But Fatima was not finished. There's something else, she said softly, her voice a thread woven with both sorrow and purpose. Something I need to tell you before we part ways. She reached beside her into her worn, faded travel bag, a simple canvas sack that had traveled many roads, and pulled out a small wrapped package. It was delicately wrapped in brown paper, tied with a single piece of twine. Her fingers, though blind, found the edges of the knot with ease. Years of navigating a sightless world had given her hands an intelligence all their own. This, she said, lifting the package with reverence, is for my daughter. She held it out, not quite offering it yet, but allowing it to be seen. The package was light, but something about it felt heavy with meaning. I make the journey to see her every month, she said, and I always bring her something. A trinket, a treat, a token. Something small to remind her that her old mother thinks of her every day. She paused, and her hands began to tremble. Her voice faltered, just for a moment, but when she spoke again it was with heartbreaking honesty. Today was going to be my last visit. A hush fell over the crowd again, like the sound of breath being held. I've been ill, she continued. The doctors say I don't have much time left. My heart is weak. My lungs are fading. I was traveling today to tell her goodbye, to give her this final gift, and to let her know just how much I love her. Ibrahim felt his chest tighten. It was all too much. The fire, the fear, the sacrifice, and now this a final visit from a dying mother to her daughter. A goodbye wrapped in paper and twine. But Fatima wasn't finished. I thought I was going to die in that fire, she said. And maybe part of me was ready to, maybe part of me thought it was fitting to end where I almost ended before. But God, she smiled faintly, had another plan. She reached out and placed the package in Ibrahim's hands. Her touch was firm now, resolute. He sent you, she said, not just to save me from the flames, but from the despair I have carried for 20 years. You were not there by accident. You were placed. Ibrahim tried to return the gift, shaking his head. Madame, I can't. This is for your daughter. Fatima gently pushed his hand back. My daughter will understand, she said. She knows her mother's heart. She knows that love shared is love multiplied, not diminished. The young mother from earlier stepped forward, gently helping Fatima to her feet. Fatima accepted the help, rising slowly, leaning on her cane. She turned her head toward the sound of Ibrahim's breath and smiled again. I have one more journey to make, Ibrahim. But now, I make it with peace in my heart. I know that heroes still walk this earth. The emergency services had arrived by now, sirens flashing blue and red into the night. Paramedics checked vitals. Firefighters hosed down the last of the flames, and police officers gently questioned the passengers. But in the center of it all, in that broken desert, stood something more powerful than any rescue crew. A moment of healing, a mother forgiven by fate, a man discovering his purpose. As Fatima turned to go, her walking stick tapping steadily on the ground, she offered her final words to Ibrahim. Thank you, she said, for showing me that love is not about dying. She paused and smiled toward the night. It's about living. It's about making sure that goodness survives in this world. And then she was gone, boarding another bus that would take her the final miles to her daughter. Ibrahim remained where he was, staring down at the package in his hands. It was small, but it felt enormous. The husk of the bus behind him stood as a burned-out skeleton, a monument to how quickly life can turn. But that wasn't what people would remember. The true monument was in the hearts of the survivors, in the silence, in the tears, in the memories of what it meant to see kindness emerge from the fire. Ibrahim would carry that package, but more importantly, he would carry the moment, always.